Hey, this is Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in Anno 1800. I played a 4-player game of this, my first game of Anno 1800, just the other day. I believe this is a tabletop game based on a digital game, but I have not played the digital game, just the tabletop game. It is essentially a tech tree game where you're buying certain things. So I'll show you a tile. So here's a tile like this. So you want to buy this tile so that you can make this resource. And so you need to be able to produce these resources to make this tile. And then you add this tile to your tableau. And from then on, you can place blue cubes, blue workers essentially here or here to produce this resource, which will help you create more and better things to fulfill orders and satisfy people, things like that. So you're turning things into other things to make them into really great, to turn them into points essentially and to accomplish goals. And there are a few things I really like in this game, but the number one thing that I think is really, really satisfying, beyond that tech tree, I do want to say that that tech tree of creating one thing so that you can build these other things is really satisfying. You'll look at your goal cards and see this thing that you need to create, this fairly complex technology that you need to create, and you can look across the board at all these tiles on the board. There are dozens of tiles on the board, and you can say, okay, I need to make this, I need these things, and to get these things, I need to make these things, and so on throughout all these tiles. And that is where my favorite mechanism emerges, because you don't actually have to produce all those things. Rather, you can rely somewhat on your opponents, and your opponents might end up relying somewhat on you. So in the case of like this sail, if you want to make this sail, you could have or try to make wood and cloth. To make a sail. To be able to make that sail, then you flip it over and you have a sail that you can use from then on. You could do that. Or you could have wood, but someone else at the table, someone else in this empire could make cloth instead, and you could use their cloth by paying a trade token. So you pay a trade token, it doesn't go to the opponent, it goes to the supply, and it depends on the value of cloth too. Some of these resources, well, depending on the color required, the color of worker required, you might need to spend more than one trade token. But you spend trade tokens to the supply, and the opponent gets a gold from the supply because you have used their good. Again, it's not something that you are paying the opponent. You're paying to the supply, and they are getting something from the supply. And then you get to make this sale. And this happens throughout the game. There are so many things that you can make in the game that you really can't make all of them. So you need to rely on your opponents. And it doesn't feel like a sacrifice when you do. It just feels like one of the ways to make a thing is to rely on your opponents. And when opponents rely on you to make something, it almost always feels good then as well, because you're getting a gold. You're not having to do anything, and you are getting a gold for it. They aren't even blocking your space with a worker. I don't think I have any really complex things here among my examples. Let's see if I have any higher level. No, I mean, you can't even really tell from looking at these tiles. These are just tiles with things that you need to have access to or to make to be able to make sliced bread in this case. The one instance I found in the game, and I'll just throw this out there because I love this mechanism. I think it's great. I love positive player interaction. I love this type of interaction in games in general. I did notice for most of the game, I was building towards a big, nice technology. And when I got really close to making that technology, I had made everything I needed to make that technology. And an opponent made it first. They made it instead using the stuff that I had created. And it was an interesting moment in the game because at that point, when that happened, the opponent deserved it. They had built up enough trade tokens. They had gone more of a trade strategy. They had a bunch of trade tokens so they could afford to do that. They needed a bunch to use these various materials that I had created. But I had built up to this moment where I was ready to make this really cool technology. And all of a sudden, because my opponent made it, I no longer needed to make that thing. Because my opponent had it. And so that, I don't know if it felt a little weird at that point in the game because I had spent so much time building towards this thing that I wanted to make. But that's the one, and I don't even know if this is really a criticism of this mechanism, just a little observation that as much as I love this positive player interaction of relying on your opponents and letting them rely on you, there might be a slight downside with kind of intrinsic goals, intrinsic motivations. I felt really good about making this thing, and all of a sudden, it no longer made sense in the game for me to make this thing because an opponent already had it. They had made it instead. So just a little observation there. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, and curious to hear your thoughts on Anno 1800 in general, and this positive player interaction trading style mechanism. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks.